I always thought my son was just going through a phase. Late nights, locked doors, the glow of the screen on his face. It was just gaming, right? But when I came home one day and found my grandmother's necklace missing, gone without a trace, something inside me shattered. Then I saw it. A pawn shop receipt, signed in my son's name. He had sold my memories for virtual points. They say you shouldn't fight fire with fire, but I wasn't going to lecture him or take his console. No, I had another plan, one that would make him feel the weight of his choices. And what I did next, well, let's just say my son will never forget the day his mother beat him at his own game. My name is Lena Moore. I'm a single mom, a nurse, and someone who used to believe that love and patience could fix anything. My son, Ryan, had always been my sunshine. When he was little, he'd race into my arms after school talking a mile a minute about dinosaurs or superheroes. He was kind, funny, and had the biggest heart. We used to bake cookies on Sunday nights and make pillow forts in the living room. Our little apartment, though sometimes a struggle to maintain on a nurse's salary, was filled with laughter and love. But then came high school, and with it, the silence. It didn't happen overnight. It was a gradual erosion. At first, it was subtle earbuds permanently lodged in his ears, conversations shrinking to monosyllabic grunts, his bedroom door once always open, now constantly closed. I chalked it up to puberty, to the tumultuous mood swings, to the hormonal roller coaster. You know, the usual stuff every teenager navigates, or so I told myself. But then, the glow started. That blue, eerie, almost hypnotic glow emanating from his computer screen, a beacon that stayed on long past midnight, often into the pre-dawn hours. Sometimes when I'd walk past his room on my way to the bathroom at 2 a.m., exhausted after a long shift, I'd hear him talking, no yelling, animatedly into a headset. A whole new vocabulary had entered our lives, words like respawn Lagnerf and raid replacing actual sentences. Family breakfasts, once a weekend ritual, turned into hurried cereal slurps, while his eyes were glued to his phone scrolling through gaming forums. Eye contact, a relic of the past. Meaningful conversations, minimal if any. And chores, forget about it. The carefully constructed chore chart on the fridge gathered dust, a monument to a bygone era of cooperation. I tried talking to him. I really, truly did. My nursing training taught me patience, empathy, the importance of communication. Sweetheart, how about we have a no-screen dinner tonight? Just you and me. I'd suggest setting the table for two with a hopeful heart. Can't. I'm in the middle of something important, he'd mumble, not even glancing up from his glowing screen, his fingers a blur across the keyboard. Eventually, those dinners for two became dinners for one. Me alone at the table, the silence amplifying my growing unease. I told myself it was just a phase, that he'd grow out of it, that all his friends were doing it, that he'd come around. But deep down, a cold knot of worry tightened in my stomach. Something wasn't right. He was slipping away from me into a world I didn't understand, a world that seemed to value virtual achievements over real-life connections. It all came crashing down on a rainy, miserable Tuesday. I'd had a brutal shift at the hospital. 12 relentless hours on my feet, back-to-back trauma cases, one flatline that replayed in my head, a stark reminder of life's fragility. I was drained emotionally and physically. All I wanted was a hot shower, the comfort of my worn-out robe, and to hold something that brought me a small measure of peace, a connection to a gentler past. That something was my mother's necklace, a delicate silver chain with a tiny heart-shaped amethyst pendant. It wasn't valuable in monetary terms, but its sentimental worth was immeasurable. She'd worn it every single day until she passed away. When she died, she left it to me with a small handwritten note. Its ink faded, but the words still clear, to remind you of your strength. My darling Lena, especially when you feel small and the world feels too big. I kept it in its original faded velvet box tucked safely away in the top drawer of my bedroom dresser. My own private talisman. But that night when I opened the drawer, my hand reaching for that familiar comfort, the box was gone. I froze, a chill snaking down my spine that had nothing to do with the damp evening. I tore through the drawer, then the next, my jewelry tray, the bathroom cabinet, even the laundry basket in a fit of rising panic. Nothing. My heart pounded louder and louder with each fruitless second. I ran downstairs, my mind racing, checking the living room, the kitchen, places it would never be. Still nothing. A wave of nausea washed over me. It felt like a physical blow. That necklace wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was my mother's love, her memory, her enduring presence in my life. It was priceless. I stormed up to Ryan's room and knocked hard, my usual patience completely gone. No answer. Just the muffled sounds of explosions and frantic typing from within. I twisted the knob and opened the door and found him exactly as I'd expected, hunched over his desk, headset clamped on, fingers flying across his illuminated keyboard like he was single-handedly fighting a war. The blue glow of the monitor reflected in his vacant eyes. "Ryan." I snapped, my voice sharper than I intended. He jumped, startled, yanking off the headset, his face a mask of annoyance at the interruption. "What?" "God, Mom, you scared me. Where's the necklace?" My voice was tight, trembling. He blinked, his expression shifting from annoyance to confusion. "What necklace are you talking about?" "The one from Grandma. The silver chain with the purple heart. It's gone from my drawer. Ryan, did you take it?" He looked away, then his gaze skittering to the side, avoiding mine. A telltale sign. "I don't know what you're talking about, Mom. I haven't seen any necklace." My gut twisted. His voice, though attempting nonchalance, trembled slightly. He was lying. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. The shock and a sudden cold clarity held my emotions in check. I just turned and walked out of his room, the unspoken accusation hanging heavy in the air between us. And that's when I saw it lying innocuously on the kitchen counter, peeking out from under a pile of his school books near his discarded backpack. A crumpled, flimsy receipt. "Cash advance, pawn and gold. Downtown." My hands shook uncontrollably as I picked it up, my vision blurring. Item listed: silver chain, Wassa's purple heart-shaped gem. Amount $45. Signed by Ryan Moore. His familiar, boyish scrawl. I stood there in the dim light of the kitchen, staring at that wretched piece of paper as if it were a venomous snake. It felt like a knife being slowly, deliberately twisted in my chest. He had sold my mother's legacy. He had pawned the one tangible thing I had left of her for $45, not for food, not for rent, not for any desperate need, but for a game, for virtual points, for a fleeting digital thrill. That night, I didn't say another word to him. I couldn't. The betrayal was too raw, too deep. I slept on the couch, or rather lay there wide-eyed, clinging to a pillow, silent tears soaking through the worn fabric, my heart aching with a grief I hadn't felt since my mother died. The next morning, he was gone before I woke up, off to school, without a word, leaving only the lingering scent of stale energy drinks and teenage apathy in his wake. And that's when I knew. This wasn't just a phase anymore. This was a crisis. Lectures wouldn't work. They'd go in one earbud and out the other, grounding him, taking away his phone. Those were battles I'd fought and lost before, resulting only in more resentment, more slammed doors. Taking away his precious gaming console would just spark another massive, ugly fight and achieve nothing in the long run but a temporary ceasefire. No, if I wanted to teach him a lesson, a real lesson one, he would never, ever forget I had to enter his world. I had to play this game on his level. I had to make him understand the weight of loss, the sting of betrayal in terms he could comprehend. And I was ready. The quiet, patient Lena was gone. A different kind of mother was emerging. I didn't go to work the next day. I called in sick, my voice carefully neutral, even though the sickness I felt was in my soul, not my body. Not in the way my supervisor would understand. I needed time not to recover from a physical ailment, but to prepare. Because what I was about to do required precision, patience, and most of all, a steely, unwavering restraint. After Ryan left for school, his usual grunt of a goodbye, barely audible. I sat at the kitchen table, the bitter coffee doing little to soothe the acrid taste of betrayal in my mouth. I stared at the pawn shop receipt. $45. That's all my mother's memory, her strength, her love was worth to him in that moment. But I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to rage. That would be too easy, too predictable. He'd tune it out. No, I would do something far more powerful. I would show him. I would make him feel. My first stop was the pawn shop. Cash Advance Pawn and Gold. The name itself felt like an insult. The man behind the scratched plexiglass counter, balding and with eyes that had seen too much desperation, recognized the necklace immediately when I described it. "Oh yeah, the silver heart thing," he said, his voice gravelly. "Kid came in yesterday. Said it was his grandma's, that she didn't want it anymore. Seemed real nervous handing it over, kept looking over his shoulder." I managed a polite, tight-lipped smile, paid the $45 plus their small fee, and took the velvet box back into my trembling hands. Holding it felt like holding a fragile, wounded bird. I didn't cry, not then. I'd done all my crying the night before. Now I was focused, a cold clarity guiding my actions. I drove home, and the first thing I did was find a new, inviolable hiding spot for the necklace. Deep inside, an old, forgotten purse zipped into a dusty suitcase stored high on a shelf in my closet. It would be safe there. Then I got to work on my real plan. That afternoon, after confirming Ryan was at a friend's house supposedly studying, but I knew better, I went into his room. His sanctuary. His digital kingdom. It was a predictable mess. Empty cans of soda and energy drinks littered the desk. Chip bags lay crumpled on the floor, discarded clothes formed small mountains, and at the center of it all, his glowing computer rig that looked like it belonged on the bridge of a spaceship. His expensive headphones still hung from the back of his gaming chair. The keys on his specialized keyboard were visibly worn from countless hours, days, weeks, months of relentless use. I sat down at his desk in his chair and took a deep breath. I opened his game. The one he poured all his time, his energy, his allowance, and now, apparently my stolen memories, into. Realm of Warriors, it was called. It didn't take long to find what I needed. He wasn't exactly security conscious. His login details were saved. His account, his game inventory, his online wallet, all laid bare. I didn't touch a thing. Not yet. My revenge needed to be more nuanced than simple destruction. Instead, I took meticulous notes. His prized digital possessions, a legendary custom sword skin, the Blade of Eternal Nightmares, which he'd boasted had taken him weeks to earn, a set of ultra-rare dragon-scale armor he had probably stayed up 3 consecutive nights grinding for during a special event, and his in-game currency balance, nearly $300 worth of realm crystals bought and earned. All digital. All intangible, all utterly precious to him. A sad, ironic smile touched my lips. He had traded something real and irreplaceable for these fleeting pixels. And then I made some important phone calls. I called Ryan's homeroom teacher first. I explained my deep concerns about his recent drastic changes, his declining grades, his chronic lack of sleep, his almost complete social withdrawal. She wasn't surprised. In fact, she sounded relieved. "Honestly, Mrs. Moore," she said gently, her voice full of genuine concern, "I've wanted to talk to you for weeks. Ryan's been adrift. He's zoning out constantly in class. He actually fell asleep during a history test last Thursday. We thought maybe something serious was going on at home." There was something serious going on at home. He was losing himself to a screen, and I, in my exhaustion and misplaced hope that it was just a phase, had let it happen. After that, I called a highly recommended family counselor who specialized in adolescent issues and behavioral problems. I set up an appointment, not just for him, for us. Then came the harder, more emotionally charged part. The part that felt like walking a tightrope. That evening, I waited until I heard the shower running in the bathroom. Ryan's one predictable non-gaming related routine. I slipped back into his room, sat at his desk again, and this time I turned on his webcam. I recorded a short video. My hands were surprisingly steady as I looked directly into the small lens, imagining I was looking into his eyes. "Hey Ryan, it's Mom." My voice was calm, measured. "I'm not mad. Not anymore. The anger has passed. Now I just want to talk. So I'm making this video because I know you probably won't sit down and actually listen, truly listen if I try to have this conversation in person right now. And that's okay. But you need to hear me, really hear me this time. I paused, took a deep, steadying breath. I know you're struggling, sweetheart. I see it even if you try to hide it. I know gaming makes you feel powerful, connected, in control in ways that maybe real life doesn't right now. I can try to understand that. But you crossed a line, Ryan. A serious line. You crossed it when you took something that wasn't yours to take. When you sold something that meant everything to me, something that represented a precious part of our family, of my heart. My voice cracked then just for a moment with the weight of that betrayal. But I kept going, forcing the words out. I'm not taking away your console. I'm not throwing out your expensive gear. That would just be a punishment, and this isn't just about punishment. This is about understanding. But I am going to do something else. Something that I truly hope, will make you feel even a fraction of what I felt when I realized what you'd done. I ended the recording, saved the file to his desktop with an innocuous name, and then using a simple scheduling app set it to autoplay the very moment he logged into his computer next. Then, with a heavy heart but a resolute mind, I logged into his Realm of Warriors account. I didn't sell his gear. I didn't delete a single item from his painstakingly acquired inventory. That would have been too close to his own transgression. Instead, I made it look like it had all vanished. Every sword, every shield, every rare potion, every cosmetic skin. I moved them all into a hidden secondary inventory slot that only high-level game masters usually had access to, a trick I'd learned from a surprisingly helpful online forum for parents of gaming-addicted teens. To him, it would appear as if his account had been wiped clean, hacked, emptied, his digital empire seemingly gone. I changed his password to something complex and random, logged out, and left his room, the silence feeling heavy and foreboding. That night, at our silent dinner, we barely spoke. He offered his usual one-word answers to my attempts at conversation, his eyes glued to his phone, his mood visibly tense and irritable. I didn't push him. I didn't mention the necklace or the pawn ticket or anything. But I watched, closely, waiting. And the next morning, it happened, as predictably as the sunrise. A blood-curdling scream ripped through the quiet morning air from his room. Mom! Mom! I walked in slowly, my face carefully composed into an expression of neutral concern. What's wrong? Ryan, what happened? It's gone. Everything is gone. My gear, my tokens, my dragon scale armor, my blade of eternal nightmares. I've been hacked. Someone hacked my account. He was pacing the small room like a caged animal, panic etched all over his face, his eyes wide with disbelief and unshed tears. My heart ached to see him so distressed, but I stayed firm. This was necessary. Hacked. Are you sure, honey? I asked, my voice calm. Yes, I'm sure. This can't be happening. I worked months for that stuff. Years. My sword, my best skins, my realm. Crystals. Everything's just gone. His voice cracked on the last word. I nodded solemnly, meeting his distraught gaze. It's a terrible feeling, isn't it? When something that matters so much to you, something you've invested so much in, gets taken away without your permission. When it just vanishes. He froze mid-pace. His head snapped up. He looked at me, really looked at me, blinking through his panic. And then, slowly, agonizingly, understanding dawned in his eyes. The connection was made. You, he whispered, his voice barely audible. You did this. I didn't sell anything. Ryan, I said softly, my voice gentle but firm. I didn't delete it. It's all still there, safe. But I wanted you to feel just for a moment what it's like to lose something precious, something you thought was secure, something that holds deep meaning for you. He sat down heavily on the edge of his unmade bed, the fire, the panic visibly draining from him, replaced by a dawning, horrified comprehension. I didn't think it mattered that much to you, he whispered, his gaze dropping to the floor. It was just a necklace. No, Ryan, I said. my voice still soft, but with an edge of steel now. It wasn't just a necklace. Not to me. Just like that game, that gear isn't just a game to you. You don't have to understand exactly what it means to me, but you do have to respect that it means something. You have to respect other people's boundaries, other people's hearts. We sat in silence then, a heavy, profound silence, and for the first time in months, he listened. He truly, deeply listened. The message delivered in a language he understood had finally broken through the digital wall. The silence after our conversation was heavier, more profound than any yelling or screaming could ever have been. It was a silence filled with unspoken thoughts, with dawning realizations, with the uncomfortable weight of consequence. For the rest of that day, Ryan didn't touch his console. He didn't retreat into the angry, stomping defiance I had come to expect. He didn't slam his door. He just existed, quietly, thoughtfully, almost like a stranger in his own room. It was strange, unsettling even seeing him that way. He'd always been a firecracker, restless energy, a quick temper, impulsive to a fault. But that day, something fundamental in him had shifted. It was as if someone had finally yanked the power cord out of his hyper-stimulated internal engine, and he was sitting still, truly still, for the first time in years. I didn't press him. I didn't offer platitudes or further lectures. I just let the silence and the weight of his own understanding do its work. That evening, as I was preparing a simple dinner, I found him at the kitchen table. Not with a tablet in his hand, not with earbuds blocking out the world, not with a controller clutched like a lifeline, but with his school notebook, open, a pen actually in his hand, writing. I almost dropped the plate I was holding. It was a sight I hadn't witnessed in what felt like an eternity. He glanced up briefly as I entered, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. Shame. Regret. Then he looked back down at his work. I'm trying to catch up, he muttered, his voice low, almost a whisper. Missed a lot of notes in chemistry. I didn't say anything. I just nodded, a lump forming in my throat, and quietly continued washing the dishes, biting my lip hard to hold back the sudden, overwhelming surge of tears. Tears not of sadness this time, but of a fragile, burgeoning hope. That night, long after he had gone to bed, at a reasonable hour for once, I logged back into his gaming account from my own laptop. With a few careful clicks, I restored everything. Every item, every token, every painstakingly earned weapon and piece of armor. His digital empire intact, but I didn't give him the new password. Not just yet. The lesson wasn't quite over. Instead, I left a small handwritten note on his desk placed directly on his inert keyboard. Some things, Ryan, can be restored with a few clicks. Some losses are temporary. But some things, once broken, once betrayed, can't ever be fully put back together the same way. What you choose to do next decides which is which. The game is still yours. The choices are too. The next morning, he didn't mention the note. He didn't ask about his game. But I saw the way he kept glancing at it while he was brushing his teeth, while he was tying his shoes, while he was reluctantly packing his school bag. Like the words haunted him, like he was turning them over and over in his mind. And for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, he didn't ask, his voice already tinged with anticipation. Can I game after school? Instead, as he was leaving, he paused at the door and said, his voice hesitant, almost shy. Mom, can we maybe talk when I get home? For real this time? My heart did a little flip. I'd like that very much, Ryan. That afternoon, we sat across from each other at the kitchen table again. No glowing screens between us, no distractions. Only this time the heavy, oppressive silence was gone, replaced by a tentative openness. He apologized, and it wasn't the mumbled, half-hearted sorry I had become accustomed to expecting. It was a real apology, his eyes meeting mine, filled with a genuine, painful remorse. I didn't realize how bad it had gotten, Mom, he said, his voice quiet, struggling. With the game, I mean. I thought I could balance it all. School chores, everything. But I was drowning in it. And it was easier to just keep playing, to keep winning in there because I just didn't want to feel anything else. Anything real. I nodded slowly, my own heart aching with a new understanding of his pain, his escape. "I get that, sweetie," I said softly. "Escaping is easy. It's tempting. Facing things, that takes real courage." He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. "I pawned the necklace because I needed more realm crystals. For a big tournament. Everyone else was buying power-ups and I panicked. It was so dumb, Mom. So stupid. I know that now. I'm so sorry." I took a deep breath, then reached into my purse and slid the small faded velvet box across the table toward him. His eyes widened first in disbelief, then in dawning hope. You got it back." "It was never really lost to me, Ryan," I said, my voice gentle. "But I almost lost you, and that scared me more than any lost object ever could." He opened the box, slowly, reverently, his fingers tracing the delicate silver chain, the tiny amethyst heart. He held it as if it might break, as if he finally understood its true, intangible worth. "You wore this every Christmas," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "And on your birthdays." "It was Grandma's right," I nodded, a sad smile touching my lips. "She gave it to me when I turned 16. She said it was a reminder that the women in our family carry a quiet strength, a resilience, often where the world forgets to look or chooses not to see." He closed the box carefully and pushed it back toward me. I'm not ready to carry that yet, Mom," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't deserve to, but one day, I want to earn it back. For real." I reached across the table and took his hand, my smile genuine, now full of love and a renewed hope. "You already started, Ryan. The moment you chose to talk, to be honest, you started." A week later, we went to our first session with the family counselor. He didn't want to go at first. He grumbled, said it felt awkward, that he didn't need some stranger telling him how to live his life. But after 2 sessions, something clicked. For both of us. He opened up. Truly opened up. About the intense pressure he felt at school. The pervasive loneliness that high school can breed. The crippling fear of failure, of not measuring up. And finally, the powerful, seductive addiction to the escape. The control, the validation that gaming gave him when the real world felt too overwhelming. And I opened up too. About feeling helpless watching him drift away. About the exhaustion of working 2 jobs to keep us afloat. About the crushing guilt I carried, wondering if I had somehow failed him as a mother, if my own tiredness and stress had contributed to him seeking refuge in a virtual world. We started healing. Not all at once. Not perfectly. There were still stumbles, still moments of frustration, still old habits trying to creep back in. But we were healing honestly, together. And that I realized was more than enough. It was everything. A month later, after a particularly good week, homework done without prompting, chores completed, even a voluntary conversation about his day, I handed him a small sealed envelope. Inside was the new password to his gaming account. He looked at it for a long moment, turning the slip of paper over in his fingers. Then he set it aside on the counter. "Maybe later, Mom," he said, a small, thoughtful smile playing on his lips. I kind of like having time to actually breathe, to think. Instead, he picked up his science notebook from the table and asked, his voice a little hesitant, "Hey, do you think... could you maybe help me study for this upcoming test? I'm really struggling with cellular respiration." I nearly cried right there at the kitchen table, my heart swelling with a love and pride so immense it almost hurt. They say teaching kids lessons is about discipline, about rules and consequences. But sometimes I think it's more about empathy, about connection, about finding a way to speak their language, especially when they've forgotten how to listen to yours. That day, I didn't just teach my son a lesson, he taught me something profound too. That sometimes the loudest, most powerful love is the kind that quietly, persistently whispers, "I see you. I believe in you, and I'm not giving up on us," because parenting, I've learned, isn't about control. It's not about winning battles or imposing your will. It's about connection, It's about guiding understanding, and sometimes it's about resetting the entire system together. And the greatest victories, they don't happen on a glowing screen. They happen in the quiet moments across a kitchen table when a mother and son finally find their way back to each other.